Everything changed after best friend spread lies that my boyfriend sent her creepy messages, but when I confronted her she laughed and said she did it to protect me even though I never asked her to interfere. It started with a look. Just a flick of her eyes when his name was mentioned, as if something was wriggling under the skin that she couldn't quite hide. I noticed it at first, but dismissed it, told myself I was imagining things. I assumed she was being protective, maybe overprotective because she liked me. But the thing is, I ignored the signs because I wanted to believe she loved me enough to be glad for me. She'd been my person for years. The one I went to when the world was over. We shared it all, tears and secrets and stupid jokes that made no sense to anyone else but us. She knew my past. She got it, what I'd been through, the protective nature I had around love because I'd been hurt before. So when I came across this one individual who felt different, someone who truly made me feel protected, seen, whole, it was everything to me that I could bring him into our crew, into her world too. Everything was fine at first. She'd smile, laugh, even go out of her way to include him when we'd all get together. But underlying it all, I felt this strange tension, this undertow of something indefinable. She started making little comments. Not outright insults, but stabs. Wow, he's just so quiet. Or, are you sure you guys have enough things in common? It wasn't what she was saying, it was how she was saying it, light and breezy, but with this fervor that led me to doubt her. I'd catch her staring at us when she thought I wasn't noticing, her lips pursed, her eyes clenched, like she was searching for something to despise. And even then, I was justifying her in my head. She's just protective. She just wants the best for me. That's what I kept reminding myself. But I was mistaken. So mistaken. It was about 6 months into the relationship when things started to unravel. I was at home one afternoon when my phone lit up with a text from a college friend I hadn't talked to in months. She wrote, "Hey, sorry if this is weird, but I heard your guy's been texting your best friend late at night." I stonewalled. I read it again, thinking I must have made a mistake. I got this cold rush down my spine, as if I had walked into a room I shouldn't have been in. My fingers trembled as I answered. "What do you mean?" She sent screenshots. Texts that looked like his, flirtatious, suggestive, but too intimate. They all were from random nights, usually after midnight. I stared at the screen, trying to catch my breath, trying to comprehend what I was seeing. My heart was pounding so loudly that I barely heard anything else. The house was too quiet, like the mood had changed. I called him. He picked up on the second ring, his tone frail and tired. "Hey babe, is everything okay?" I asked him point blank. "Did you text her?" He was befuddled. Offended even. "What? No. Why would I do that?" And I needed to believe him. God, I so desperately needed to believe him. But the suspicion had taken hold already. It was like a fissure in glass, thin, almost invisible at first, but slowly spreading, irreversible. I spent the entire night lying awake. I glared and glared at the texts. Constant going through each second between us in my head, attempting to know what I had missed. The next morning, I went to speak to her. I wish I could define that sensation. Watching her smile, so genuine, like nothing was wrong, like she didn't know the blaze she'd ignited inside of me. I told her what I'd heard, what I'd seen. And she didn't even flinch. Didn't blink. She glared me straight in the eye and said, "Yeah, he's been calling. Texting. I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to hurt you." The way she did it, so cool, so scripted, it churned my stomach. But something didn't sit right with me. Something too scripted in the way that she said it, as if she was memorizing lines. I insisted on proof. Call records, texts, anything. She shrugged. Told her she erased them. Told her she did not want to have, gross, stuff like that on her phone. And suddenly everything in me split. My head told me something was off with her story, that this didn't add up. But my heart, my tired, anxious heart, was breaking at what I didn't know. I stayed away from him after that. Not all the way. I didn't blame him, not explicitly. But I was cold. Distant. I wondered about every little thing, why he was taking his time to reply, why he looked at his phone and smiled. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't help it. I started snooping into his phone when he slept. Watching all his moves. And the more I watched, the more I saw. There was nothing. No evidence. No red flags. Just a guy who loved me and couldn't understand why I was getting away. He sat me down one night, looked me directly in the eye, and told me, "I don't know what I did, but I feel like I'm losing you. If you don't trust me, just tell me. But don't punish me for something I haven't done." And something in me snapped. That's when I started digging. Not in his phone, but in hers. I remembered a moment, weeks back, when she had placed her phone on my coffee table to use the bathroom. A brief passing thought, but it lingered. I remembered the app she'd used for messaging, and I was aware that she was syncing her chats to her laptop sometimes. I don't know what came over me to do this. Maybe I was desperate. Maybe some small voice inside of me was screaming loud enough at last. But I did find out something. Not in the messages she had with him, those were empty. But in the messages she had with someone else. A friend that they shared. She'd been ranting. Making declarations like, "I don't trust him. He's not good enough for her. I wish she'd just wake up already." And then one sentence that made my blood run cold. "I'm gonna make her see. She's worth more than that, and he's going to destroy her. She'll thank me one day." That was it. No flat-out confession. And no out-and-out admission. But it was sufficient. Sufficient for me to know the truth. She didn't believe he was good enough. So she lied. She made up messages. She created a story. And I, a dupe, believed her. I remember just sitting there, looking at the screen, not blinking, like if I stared long enough, maybe the words would change. Maybe I was reading it wrong, maybe it said something other than what I thought it said. But however many times I read it, however much I wanted it to be something other than this, the truth was there, bitter and stark. She had done this on purpose. And the worst part wasn't even the lie. It was that I had trusted her. Over him. Over the man who had done nothing but love and patiently wait for me. The man who held my hand when I cried about things that I couldn't even explain. The man who let me be myself again after all those years of putting up walls. And I distrusted him, rejected him, because the single human being I ever thought would never hurt me, did. My chest was hollow. Like someone had taken a vacuum cleaner and sucked all the air from my body. My fingers went cold. I just sat there for a moment, shaking hands, running it all through my head. Her face when she told me he had called her, how she tilted her head to the side when I asked her, like she was playing a role. All my recollections of her now altered. I started to pay attention to all the things I'd been ignoring. Her jealousy and her smile when I talked about him, the way she'd deflect my attention every time I was contented, the way she'd constantly bring up my past sorrow like it was a warning not to trust some new guy. I thought of calling her. Thought of screaming, blaming, spewing everything back at her. But I didn't. I didn't even want to know what she had to say. I could no longer believe anything that would come from her mouth. I phoned him instead. My voice was small when he answered, like I didn't even know who I was. "Hey, come on over?" He didn't ask me anything. Just a plain, "I'm on my way." When he arrived, I barely glanced at him. I was so humiliated. He sat next to me on the couch, didn't even touch me initially, just looked at me like he was bracing for bad news. I took a deep breath. "She lied," I whispered. "I discovered messages. She orchestrated everything. She had me think that you were cheating." His shoulders sagged, like he had been shouldering something for weeks without knowing why. He didn't reply right away, and I didn't pressure him. Finally, he asked, "Why?" And I didn't have an adequate response. Because she didn't get along with you? Because she thought she knew better what was best for me? Because she couldn't stand the idea that she wasn't anymore the center of my universe? I didn't know. All I knew was that something inside of me had broken, something sacred, and it would never be the same. We talked for hours that night. Trust. Fear. How I let someone else's lie poison what we shared. He didn't yell. Didn't lose his temper. But I saw it in his eyes, that flicker of hurt. That unspoken question, "Why didn't you trust me?" And I had no recourse. I cried. I apologized. Told him how lost I'd been, how torn, how much I hated myself for not going to him in honesty, for not believing the man who'd earned it. He took my hand and said, You believed her because you'd known her longer. And I understand. But I need to know that next time, if something doesn't seem right, you'll come and talk to me first. We can't work if we don't communicate. That shattered me all over again. Because he wasn't just forgiving me, he was asking me to rebuild. Piece by piece. And I knew it wouldn't be easy. Trust once broken does not simply snap back into its former shape. It takes effort. Time. Honesty. But that night, for the first time in weeks, I thought maybe we actually had a chance. And as for her, I did not confront her. Not directly. I did not need to. What would I get? More lies? Some manipulative excuse about doing it for my own good? No. I did not need her explanations anymore. I simply needed space. So I stopped answering her calls. I didn't answer her messages. I took her silently out of my social media, blocked her number, and done. She saw, of course. She messaged me once, something quick, like, "What's up? Are you upset?" But I didn't respond. I owed her nothing anymore. Some betrayals don't come with slamming doors or screaming fights. Some just stop with silence. A hurt, silent letting go. And that's what this was. There were weeks that followed, and I tried to rebuild. With him. With myself. Long walks where we didn't talk, but just walked and held hands and let silence speak louder than words. I started to write again. Started to take tries at understanding how I let myself be pulled so far away from my own gut. Why I did not heed that little, obstinate voice inside of me that kept whispering, "Something's not right." And the thing is, I guess some portion of me was afraid. Afraid of being mistaken. Afraid of choosing someone and it falling apart again. So when she provided me with an excuse to have doubts, I took it. Because if he left me, then at least I could say I knew it was coming. At least I could justify it to myself that I knew. But fear like this, it's poisonous. And it doesn't protect you. It just drives you away from the people who care. Now I think back, I really don't think I even miss her. That's the weirdest thing. I thought it would hurt like it would have amputated my arm. But instead, it feels like emerging from a fog I didn't even realize I was in. Like taking a breath of fresh air after being in prison for years. I get it now. The little ways she consistently worked to keep me in line. The ways she expressed support laced with control. I don't despise her. I think she was deeply insecure, and maybe jealous, and maybe justified that she was doing what was best. But that doesn't make it okay. That doesn't justify the damage she did. We're doing better now, him and me. Not perfect. We still have moments where we have to talk things through, where he has to remind me, gently, that he's not the enemy. Undefined, but we're trying. Undefined and trying honestly is more than I could ask for. Undefined. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that love, real love, isn't loud or showy or dramatic. Undefined, it's steady. Undefined, it's soft. Undefined, it's showing up even when you're hurt. And trust is not never being betrayed. It's about choosing to heal together after the storm. The thing they don't show you how to do with betrayal is that it doesn't always present itself with yelling or this grand, sweeping discovery. It can just materialize in whispers, in hesitation, in those little, aching silences that stretch out too long between two people who used to talk so easily. That was what remained after everything was said. Even though he'd forgiven me, even though we were trying, really trying to do it, he had this undertow that neither of us was going to say out loud yet. We were moving forward, sure, but there were little moments when I'd catch something on his face. A flicker of uncertainty. A hesitation. And I knew what it was. Not anger. Not resentment. Just pain. That quieter kind that doesn't scream but haunts all the same, bearing down in the space. I felt it when I stood up to get my phone and read a message. I felt it when I told another friend I was coming over and he paused, like he was going to ask, "Are you sure? Will they speak again? Will I be accused again?" And when those times arrived, I hated what was done to us. What I let seep into something so pure. We started speaking more, beyond what we'd already mentioned. Not just about what happened but about everything. Our fears. Our boundaries. Our scars. One night, he talked with me about his past relationship. How he was accused of doing things he never did. How she would twist his words, make silence a tool, guilt him about things that he didn't even know. And to learn that, God, it made everything hurt worse. Because this was a person who had already gone through the experience of being unfairly painted as a villain. And then I, a person he trusted, a person who was supposed to be safe, had done it again, even if I didn't intend to. It ripped something within me to know I'd added to that pain. He didn't rub it in my face. He didn't use it as a justification to hurt me further. But I could see it in his eyes, that pain from the past, ripped open. And I'd vowed to myself I would never ignore my gut again. That if ever something ever felt wrong, I would ask. Not assume. Not act. Just ask. Because assumptions, they're like fire. They devour everything, even the positives. I started to unpack more than what happened between us. I started looking at my own patterns. Why did I need someone to validate my choices? Why did I let someone else's opinion be louder than my own voice? I started therapy. Not because I was unraveling, but because I needed to understand the part of me that still, deep down, thought that I had to be protected from my own happiness. My therapist once asked me, "Why did you think her opinion mattered so much to you?" And I didn't know right away. I sat there, the question ringing in my head like a bell. And incrementally, the truth came out. I'd placed her on a pedestal. Because she'd been there when others weren't. Because she knew my past, my pain, and I equated that with insight. But knowing someone's past doesn't make them an expert in your future. And loving someone doesn't always mean they can love you back, at least not the way you want them to. It didn't happen overnight, but I started to forgive myself. Not dramatically, or with great fanfare, but incrementally. Unobtrusively. In small things. In learning to trust again. In talking when I was afraid instead of withdrawing. In rebuilding not the relationship per se, but myself. We began forming new patterns, he and I. We went on trips. Nothing monumental, just small weekend stuff, away from the noise. Somewhere we could maybe be ourselves once more. We laughed harder. We cooked together. We put our phones away in the other room and played cards on the floor, like kids. We were rewriting history. Reclaiming what was taken from us. And for those moments, I loved again, not just him, but the woman I was growing into. I'd be lying if I said the ghost of what had happened ever faded. Every now and then, I still wonder about her, especially when something strikes me about those years we spent together side by side. A song. A quirky photograph memory saved on my phone. A joke we shared. And it hurts. Not because I miss her, but because I mourn the person I thought she was. The version of her I clung to for so long. And maybe the most difficult part is letting go of someone but still clinging to who they were, or who they used to be, at least in your mind. There's this grief in knowing someone who claimed to love you was able to turn your trust into a weapon so easily. But there's strength too in getting through it. In choosing to protect your peace, even if it costs you history. Months passed, and then one day I bumped into her at a grocery store. It was coincidental, just one of those weird things that life has a way of springing on you. She spotted me too. We both just froze for a second. Then she smiled, small and defensive, like perhaps we could both just pretend that everything was okay. But I did not return the smile. Not out of cruelty, but because I felt nothing. No anger. No grief. Just silence. I nodded politely and moved on. And that, in my own mind, was the closure I did not know I needed. I did not need an apology. I did not need a fight. I had already repaired the only thing that mattered, myself. He was in the car, waiting for me. As I got inside, he looked at me and said, "You all right?" And I smiled actually for once and said, "Yeah. I really am." And I meant every single one of them. Because for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't carrying anyone else's lies. I wasn't giving anyone else's anger permission to color what I'd made. I was present. I was whole. I was free. Something shifted after that grocery shopping day. Not in movie-like fashion, but quietly, like an old weight I'd not even known I was carrying finally slipped off my shoulders. I didn't cry. I didn't turn into memory. I just kept going with my day, made dinner, laughed at something silly he said coming home. And that's when it hit me, I was healing. Not pretending. Not forcing it. Actually healing. Because healing, I've learned, doesn't look like some romanticized Instagram photo with a self-love caption. It looks like waking up one morning and being able to say you haven't thought about them in weeks. It looks like hearing their name go by and not getting a punch to the gut. It looks like peace where pain once lived. I wish I could say that was it. That life just went on as usual after that. But the thing is, healing is not a line. There are good days. And there are days. And there are days your brain still messes with you. Like one evening, months later, I was going through old photos on my phone, just cleaning up storage. And she was there. Her smile, the arm around my shoulders, my face against hers. We looked so happy. So stable. I stared at the picture longer than I should have, trying to match the woman in that image with the one who tried to end my relationship over what? Jealousy? Fear? I still didn't know. And maybe I never would. That's something I've learned to adapt to, not knowing all the answers. Because closure is not always an explanation. Sometimes it's just to look and see that people are multifaceted and fractured, and sometimes their hurt spills onto you in the worst ways possible. I deleted the photo. Not because I was raging, but because I treated myself gently. I didn't need to hold on to fantasy anymore. She wasn't the one I thought she was. And I didn't need to act like she had been. But I did hold what we shared prior to all of it going wrong in high regard. Because those things, the sleepovers, the midnight drives, the moments she had her arms around me when I was shattering, were real. They mattered. Even when she turned. Even when she lied to me. I don't delete people completely. I simply released them. The farther I got from her, the closer to him I was. And not because I was clinging to him as a substitute, but because the noise was gone. The quiet toxin she'd introduced between us, those doubts, those wedges, melted away. What remained was this unvarnished human, honest bond. And it was stronger now, in some way. Because we already survived something that could have broken us. And we chose to stay. Chose to rebuild. That choice, it was it all. Not everyone does that. There are many that flee when things get hard. Or worse, stay and hurt each other for the damage. But he didn't. He chose love. He chose us. And I chose to be there when he met me. We started talking about the future. Not in a duty-bound way, just small, real conversations. Things like where we would live someday, what our life would be like. He told me he wanted a house that was just peaceful. Not fancy. Not pretentious. Just something where he could just breathe. I told him I wanted to be somewhere where I could have herbs spilling out the kitchen window and read books on the floor without someone needing to come in and bother me for drama. And we'd both be laughing because it had sounded so easy, but yet so ideal. That was the kind of life we were building, not flashy, not performative. Just real. Occasionally people would ask about her. Friends in common. Old classmates. They'd speak of her in a vague way, as if they didn't know what had happened. You two were best friends, they'd say. And I'd just smile. I didn't clarify. I didn't tear her down though. Or tell the story. Because I didn't have to. The people that needed to know already knew. And the others? They didn't need to see me broken up close. I protected my peace. That was my rule. Not everybody gets invited into your healing. Some things are sacred. Private. And not everybody needs to know why you closed the door. They just have to be respectful that it's closed. There was one night, recently, when he and I were on the couch together, watching something silly on TV. My head was in his lap, his fingers casually combing through my hair. The window was slightly open, and I remember feeling the breeze drift in, cool, soft, almost whispery. I gazed up at him and told him, "Thank you for not giving up on me." He grinned, bent down, kissed my forehead, and said, "Thank you for coming back." And I knew in that instant, in the stillness of that Monday night, that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not simply with him, but with myself. With the version of me who had walked through something tough and did not let it harden her. The version of me who could trust again. To decide on love after having been lied to. To sit in the midst of the mess and still fight for something beautiful. It's insane how life is taught by pain. How something that once broke you is the same thing that remakes you. Smarter. Softer. stronger. I used to think that betrayal was the most horrible thing you could ever do to someone. But now I understand, it's not the betrayal. It's what you do afterward. Do you put it in a place where it makes you bitter? Do you let it take away your capacity to love, to trust, to hope? Or do you get up instead? Do you take that shattered trust and build something greater, brick by good brick? I got up. And I'm still going up. Every day. In silence. In increments. With someone who loves me the way that I used to think I wasn't good enough to be loved. And without someone who loved me for a time but didn't understand how to love without ownership. That book is shut. And I'm finally at peace with that. Sometimes I catch myself thinking about what I might have been if all that's occurred hadn't occurred. If she hadn't lied. If I hadn't spoken to him. If it had all been easy and kind and untainted by the sort of pain that leaves you feeling like your chest is exploding. But then I catch myself, because the truth is that I don't know that I'd trade who I am now to be where I was before all of this. That me? She was still frightened. Still depending too much on people who didn't always have her best interests at heart. Still wondering if she was deserving of something good, something safe, something real. I needed this wake-up call. As painful and confusing as it was, I needed it to wake up, to grow up, to finally evaluate the people in my life not based on history or nostalgia, but based on action. And that's what it really came down to, actions. What people do when no one's looking. What they choose to do when they realize they can lie or they can tell the truth. What they say behind doors you're not standing in. That's where loyalty is. And I learned to stop confusing longevity and love. Just because someone's been around your whole life doesn't mean they're meant to be there. Time does not always equal trust. You must earn that with integrity. With reliability. With being present. She chose control over friendship. She chose fear over faith. And I, for a season, chose her word over my own partner's heart. But that me is not here today. She's not coming back. And honestly, I don't miss her. I get asked occasionally about this. Most often by caregivers who only know fragments of the history, if I'd ever speak to her again. If she contacted me, really contacted me, would I see her? Would I listen? And I don't know how to reply to this without seeming heartless. Because the truth is, I don't think so. Not out of hate for her. I don't hate her. I've let go of anger. But forgiveness is not necessarily reconciliation. I can forgive her and never introduce her back into my life. That is not bitterness. That's boundaries. I wish her well. I hope she'll learn how to untangle whatever caused her to believe sabotage was love. I hope she gets better, for herself, and for the people she still professed to care about. But I can no longer be the person on whom she practices. I can't be the friend who ever so silently takes in someone else's brokenness and calls it loyalty. The incredible thing is, I no longer feel guilty for taking peace. That was difficult for me. I always felt I had to fix everything, make everything smooth, make everyone fine even if that meant not being okay myself. But now, I understand now my peace is not negotiable. I have fought too hard for it. I've cried too many nights. I've questioned myself too profoundly. I've recreated too much of who I am just to abandon it all in the interest of someone else's comfort. The girl I was would have sat across from her at a coffee shop, let her cry, even apologize for hurting her feelings. But the woman I am now knows that some things don't get resolved by a hug and an "everything will be okay, let's just move on." Some things take space. Permanent space. And as for him, he's still there. Still choosing me every day. We're not perfect. We've done the work. We've gone to couples therapy, had tough talks, replayed the hurt 1,000 times. But we're truthful now in a way that we weren't. Not that we were hiding, but that sometimes you don't even know how much you have to say until everything explodes. He's taught me what it is to show up, not when it's easy, but when it's difficult. When you're scared. When you've been hurt. He didn't wait for me to understand. Instead, he walked with me while I figured it out. And I will never, ever forget that. Ever. Some nights we stay up and map out our future. Children, a dog maybe, a tiny garden in the backyard. He's always saying he wants one of those porch swinging things that hang from a porch ceiling so we can sit there in the evenings and see the sky turn color. And I believe we will have that. Not because we're better than everyone else, but because we've struggled for it. We didn't leave when things got hard. We stayed. We learned. We healed. Together. And sometimes, when I look back on that first time, when I found out about the message that told me he was cheating, I still get this rush of fear. That moment will never fully leave me. But now I don't see it as the start of it all falling apart. I view it now as the moment my life started going towards something real. Something raw. Something worth fighting for. Because the truth finally came out. And when it did arrive, I had a choice: let it destroy me, or let it rebuild me. I chose the latter. And I'll keep on choosing it. Every single day. So if you're hearing this, and you've been there, if you've been lied to, manipulated, made to question your own sanity, please believe me when I tell you this: you are not crazy. You are not weak. You are not harmed for trusting the wrong person. But you are responsible for what you do afterwards. And healing? It's not forgetting. It's being able to keep walking with the memory and still be able to hold your head high. It's knowing who you are even when someone tries to rewrite your story. And it's about protecting your heart, not by building walls, but by choosing the people who consistently prove, time and time again, that they are worth being a part of it. I survived something that had assured me would kill me. And I came out the other side softer, wiser, and stronger than I ever had been. Not in spite of what happened, but because of what I learned from it. That's my truth. And that's the life I am building now, one choice, one obstacle, one real conversation at a time.